Mallory, should Walt drive into the office and get set up with an iPad and just be 20 minutes late? Would that
If he's
work?
unable, yeah, well, we can put him in your office. Yeah,
I don't know that we're gonna have success here. Okay.
okay.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It is 9 o'clock on January 25th, so I'll call the meeting to order. And firstly, I'll have the clerk, Mallory, if you will, do roll call. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm here. Okay, Councillor Clark,
I'm present.
Councillor Donaldson,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Kennedy,
Present.
and Councillor McKechnie's on his way. Councillor Smith,
Present.
Councillor Wood Roberts,
Present.
and Mayor Roberts.
Present.
Perfect.
Okay, so you can record in the minutes when Councillor McKechnie is able to join us. So the first item is I will read a land acknowledgement that we do at our council meetings. We respectfully acknowledge that Dysart et al. Is located on the Treaty 20 Michi-Sagig territory and in the traditional territory of the Michi-Sagig and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which include Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. These ancestral homes are more than a place where the Anishinaabe hunted, fished, gathered, and grew their food long before the settlers' arrival. Indigenous peoples cared for these lands and waters and have welcomed us as their guest. We pay them respect by ensuring we continue to recognize their ongoing connection to the area and by supporting the health and integrity of the lands and community for generations to come. Next, I'll ask councillors if there is any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. And seeing none, I will ask for a mover and a seconder to adopt our agenda. Moved by Councillor Wood Roberts, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular meeting of Council of Municipality of Dysart et al. Held on January 25th, 2022 be approved as presented. All in favor? And that's carried. And slightly out of order, I already asked if there was a pecuniary interest, pardon me, and there was none. So next we'll move on to the adoption of the two sets of minutes from December 21st and January 14th special meeting. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder for those, Councillor Smith and Deputy Mayor Kennedy. Be it resolved that council approves the following meeting minutes as circulated: a regular council meeting of December 21st, 2021, and the special meeting of council January 14th, 2022. All in favor? And that's carried also. Next up, we have mayor and deputy mayor update. And usually I have something to say, but today I have not prepared or even thought of anything. I apologize. So I will speak right from the heart, and I will say I'm personally feeling really overwhelmed. So I don't know how other people are feeling. COVID is, we're going to be creeping up to 2 years of these types of meetings. We are all doing our best to care for this community. The onslaught of emails, whether it be the shoreline bylaw or protecting our wetlands, there's such a nasty tone to some of them, and it's really hurtful. We're all human beings. We're part of this community, and we are doing our best as councillors, whether we're here on Dysart Council or myself and Deputy Mayor Kennedy on County Council. So I suppose today my only message is just try to be kind to each other and be patient as we work through these processes. We are all doing our best. We are listening. So thank you. Deputy Mayor Kennedy, do you want to add anything?
Well said, Madam Mayor. And just maybe it's appropriate this time. I'd like to give a shout out to the Haliburton County Snowmobile Association. I'm no longer a snowmobiler, but I've been following their efforts to try and get these trails open and get them groomed and set up for our numerous visitors. Snowmobiling is an incredibly important part of our winter economic needs here, and I think it was just appropriate. They've been and their volunteers have been going above and beyond. So thank you. Yeah,
that's great. The trails are open. I saw sleds in town the other day, so that's fantastic. So first up today, we have a delegation from Jody Curry and Faye Martin, and I see they're already online. So we do have a staff report in there, but I think what I'll do first off is Jody, turn it over to you and Faye to speak to this item, and then we'll go through the other sections if that's okay. So welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Roberts. Actually, we came here at the request of the planner, Jeff Isles. We didn't particularly have much to say other
So then
than.
in that case, what I'll do then, if that's okay, I didn't know if you wanted to speak first to it, pardon
No.
me for not
Yeah.
checking. So what I'll do, Jeff, then if that's okay, I'll turn it over to you to reference your staff report and see where council's feeling about the recommendations and the move forward on this item. So go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, I'd be happy to start. And thank you and good morning, everybody. Staff met with Places for People and the County of Haliburton last week to discuss options of moving this project forward and expedite the affordable housing development. Following up on the discussion, Places for People have submitted a letter for council consideration and direction. Places for People would like to proceed with a phased approach, starting with a small portion of the subject lands. At this time, they do not wish to incur any more costs until they've received assurances from council that access can be provided onto Halbium Crescent. If council agrees to access from Halbium Crescent, the letter of intent should be updated to reflect the new proposal. And after that, Places for People has agreed to submit a site plan. In the report, I've tried to provide links for council consideration to past reports, just to provide just a general history and status of the file. At the last meeting, which was the committee of the whole meeting, or at the last meeting this was discussed, which was the committee of the whole meeting in November, the committee recommended that the county review Dysart's traffic impact study and provide viable options for access. County Council met and discussed that request. They've directed their staff to create a terms of reference for an updated traffic impact study. And my understanding is that their staff is currently working on this. So as mentioned, in hopes of moving this forward now using a phased approach and to get affordable housing into our community, Places for People have agreed to project option 1, which was provided in the November 9th staff report. Again, this is linked for council. I have also included a site plan in today's agenda, just if anybody wishes to view it. I can quickly summarize option 1. It focuses on a reduced land conveyance initially, while maintaining long-term road location options until council decides where long-term road access will go between Wallings Road and Halbium Crescent, if it ever does. Option 1 would also delay some of the approvals and costs associated with this development until later phases. For instance, construction of a new road would not be needed right away. The Class EA process, which usually chooses where the road would go, is not needed right off the bat. Construction of a cul-de-sac, road closing application, all this stuff can be delayed until a later phase. The Public Works Department has noted that they would not object or have no objections to an entrance permit onto Halbium Crescent. They would be able to provide an entrance permit to any property owner that has frontage onto a road. If council agrees, actually, just to back up, council approval though is required to a phased approach based on option 1 and to council approval for access onto Halbium Crescent. If council agrees to proceed with this process, as mentioned, the existing letter of intent should be updated to reflect updated responsibilities and timelines. Council, I kind of want to turn it back to you to determine how you want to proceed with that letter of intent. You may wish to review each item one at a time today, or conversely, you could direct staff to bring back a staff report in the future, just to look at it in more detail. In the report, I'm making a suggestion to council today, and that was the reason I asked Jody and Faye here today, is just staff have some concerns with the existing development relationship and that it's causing delays and increasing costs for this project So council may wish to consider approving Places for People to act as the municipality's agent for this application, as we've done in other instances in the past. Typically, project design and proposals are generally the responsibility of developers. Staff are responsible for reviewing and providing guidance in the context of policy, and then ultimately council makes the final decision. In this current arrangement, it's been a little bit difficult because staff do not have authority and Places for People haven't been provided authority to act as our agents. So anytime there's a suggestion or modification or an amendment to the proposal, it has to keep coming back to council for direction and approval before proceeding. So it's causing a lot of delays, which isn't helping this project. So I should note that Places for People must agree to this arrangement. And I've made Jody aware of this, and they've suggested that they would like some more time so that they can do their due diligence before making a decision on this arrangement. So, but I wanted to bring it to council's attention today so that they can maybe kind of think about it. And once we hear back from Jody and her team, then we can move forward. So that's the basis and the summary of my report. Jody, I don't know if I left anything out and you want to comment, but yeah, that's the summary of my report.
I thought that was a great summary. Thanks, Jeff. I thought it was great. Yeah, we don't have concerns about becoming agents, but to be perfectly honest, I don't understand all the ramifications of that. So I reached out to our lawyer, and unfortunately, he let me know that he can no longer be our lawyer on this project because he has family members that have lots in Helbing. So here we go again. And so that I learned that on Friday. So and our meeting with Jeff was on the previous Tuesday, I think. So I tried to move quickly to get answers for this meeting, but I'm sorry. I just need to understand what the difference is to be the agent as opposed to what we're doing now. Because my understanding, I mean, I think we have presented all the plans. We have done all the site plans. We've done the architectural rendering. Like I'm not sure what more we would be allowed to do as an agent, but I expect a lawyer would explain that to me, or maybe Jeff can. But yeah, we're not saying no. I'm just saying I just need some advice to understand the difference. And if he says great, I don't know what you think, Faye, but I think it'll be fine as long as I have some assurance that you know, I'm not missing something. I want somebody to tell me, oh, Jody, that's a great idea. That's what I need to hear. Faye, do you have
Jody?
anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And Faye, we can't quite hear you.
Oh, I had nothing to say, so that's okay.
Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to back it up just a sec. So when we look at the key map, Jeff, that you've included in here, the red is the outline of the area that Dysart owns, that we would undertake rezoning all of the property, but the area in the hatched black lines would be the area of conveyance to Places for People, which is, I'm sorry, I don't have the measurement exactly of that piece right there. And then the rest would just, it would all be zoned at one time, but that would be the part that would be conveyed. In terms of delegating someone as an agent, I'm only familiar with that from the outside of when Wallings Way condominium was going forward, and there was a private owner of the property, and they delegated the authority to Greystone Construction to present. So they were the people able to speak on behalf of the project, even though they were not the owners of the property. And it was not complicated, but that again, it wasn't where Dysart was the owner of the property. So I just wanted to clarify that with the key map that, and I believe the density in that section says 30, no, Jeff, where is the density of that?
Yeah, the density permits 34 units, and
34 units.
that hatched area is approximately 0.37 hectares or 0.92 acres.
Okay, so just shy of a full acre is what I'm old school picture. And now, Jody, can I ask you and Faye a question of, seeing as you have been presented with this, with the density that it's saying there, is that the density that you would still try to achieve? Or what would you be able to do in a phased approach in terms of how many units you think you could get there?
Well, that's the first time I've heard the 34 numbers, so I'm glad to have that. I don't know. I'm going to have my architect who helps me in these areas figure out if we can fit 34 units on there. It's hard. The problem I see is that we want to do a development that has plenty of green space. So it's hard to guess about what's going to come to us later. I presume that at some point in time, you're going to choose one road or the other. I'm assuming you're not going to have two roads in this area, two new roads. I'm assuming you're either going to do to the east or to the west, which I assume means eventually we'll end up with more property. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, there would never be two roads,
Yeah.
and it's not really us choosing. It might be the county telling.
Right.
So-
Yes. So I guess we want to look at it in such a way as to whatever we do right now that we move ahead with on the hatched portion of the land also allows us the best possibility to develop more later. So I think we can absolutely work with this. I'm very happy that you're going to rezone the entire parcel. And if portions of it end up, consumed by roads, then that's going to be what happens. But I'm happy with that plan.
Okay, so I guess we both would need to do some investigating in terms of what delegation of delegating that authority to you to so that it doesn't constantly do this back and forth.
Mhm.
So I see a couple of questions. So first I'll go to Jeff, then Deputy Mayor Kennedy, Councillor Clark, Councillor Smith. I see you. Okay, so Jeff first.
Thank you. And I think this is a good example right now of the development relationships. So right, as per your previous question, the phased approach really hasn't been defined on how it would proceed right now. It's possible that we could rezone the entire lands and keep the surrounding lands in a holding provision until further amendments or further studies are done. But right now, so typically it would be at the developer's responsibility to provide how they want to do a phased approach. But currently the property is owned by the municipality. So really it's up to council to determine how they want to do that phased approach and phased conveyances and kind of determine how to proceed. So staff don't have authority to kind of determine how to develop this property. So this is kind of where we're stuck in the middle. How does Places for People want to go forward? How does council want to go forward? So I just want to kind of make that clear. This is kind of a good example of that we need direction from one side or the other on how this phased approach is going to happen, how the delayed conveyances are going to happen. It's possible and it can work. It's just, and we're happy to discuss it, but we don't have that authority to make that decision.
So Jeff, before I turn it over to the other councillors, just so for clarification, was that your intent or was your suggestion that we rezone the entire area in red?
Well,
I don't
again,
understand. Sorry, I'm misunderstanding something then.
again, it's possible. I think we can go ahead doing that and keeping the surrounding lands that we're not conveying at this time in a holding provision until further work is done to ensure that they can be developed. But again, yes, staff don't have that authority to make that decision. And I'm looking for some direction from council.
Okay,
on
so
how they
that's a
want to-
council decision.
Okay.
To me, we'll see what other councillors think. If we don't rezone the entire property, it leaves the remaining property wasted potentially. I'd rather do it in one application. But anyway, Deputy Mayor Kennedy, then Councillor Clark, then Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you. Jody, I want assurances here. I like the idea of this phased approach, but I'm really worried that your Place for People needed that 43 units and the structure of the buildings and the size that to make the project viable. And I'm concerned what the county's going to come back and tell us where the road is going to have to go and the widths and all that. So just concerned about the project. I don't have any issue with transferring the checkerboard part and rezoning the rest all in red to help make this project move forward. That's just my only concern is if you end up with only the checkerboard or the new road, wherever it is, it takes more land. Is your project able to become smaller and still viable? I guess that's clarification on that. Thanks.
Yes, the short answer is yes. Once we became aware of the two road situation, we went back and crunched our numbers substantially. And it's going to be very difficult. I won't say it's easy, but I know we can do it with less than 48, which is what we had originally proposed. But again, I'm very hopeful that we will end up with more than 34 eventually. I mean, that's my hope. And I'm not saying we will put 34 on this piece. I'm not saying that at all. We will put what we can afford, but our original intent always was to start with 12 and then keep adding numbers. And we thought if we did well, we might be able to start with 24. We might be able to start with 36, depending on how we made out financially. So yes, we can do it. And we'd be happy to have 34 units at this point in time.
Okay, to Councillor Clark then.
Yeah, I support this approach on the option one. There's been way too much complexity. I like the idea of zoning the entire property, but just, approval based on that first piece. And that first piece being an access via Halbion, so there's no complexity with regard to Wallings Road. And as the road issues are I guess, clarified, and that other development kind of comes into play in terms of the impact that's going to have. At that point, then I think Places for People will be in a position to see if, is it viable to add the additional buildings and how that will all look. Or at least this gets things started, and it's a substantial start based on 34 units. And then we just keep our fingers crossed that everything's smooth and you can add on the others, should everything fall into place. But the positive thing on this phased approach is to me, it reduces some complexity and gets things moving. And I think it's critical that they have that access to Halbion. That they should have the same rates for access to Halbion as any other property. In fact, they've got three property values there along Halbion, more than anybody else in the Halbion development. So that should not be a factor where people are pushing back. It's only 200 feet from where the entrance would be around to County Road 21. So there should not be objections from the group in Halbion. It's not going to impact their development at all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then on to Councillor Smith for comments, questions.
Well, thank you. And it sounds like, and maybe Jody can confirm this, and that there's been a change in the perspective of Places for People since the November meeting. Because if I recall correctly, in November, option one wasn't viable because you could only make this project work if you had permission for 48 units. Is that correct? You've got new, and I see you nodding.
Yes, we went back to the board. We went back to our numbers and spent a lot of time redoing them and going over them and seeing how we could change some of what we wanted to do. And yes, we believe we can make it work now.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And a question for Jeff then. Jeff, as you understand the work that's going to be done by the county in terms of their traffic study and then regulations regarding road requirements, is there any chance that the county could reach a conclusion that a development of even 34 units at this site is inappropriate and going to create traffic problems? They would say no.
Thank you. So just first off, the responsibility of determining the road location is going to fall back to the municipalities. So it'll be our responsibility to go through the Class EA process, which will probably provide a few options for council consideration of where to put the road. Based on the discussion with the county, so currently they're preparing a terms of reference for an updated traffic impact study, which again would be our responsibility to obtain. But going back, based on the discussion, it doesn't appear that they'd be concerned with development going through Halbion. In the meeting we had last Tuesday, they didn't show any concerns for that. So I think the traffic impact study is just to support our previous position of access going through Wallings Road.
Exactly, Councillor Smith. At the when we talked at the county, the planners, it was the planner way back recommending a phased approach, actually, Steve Stone at the county, saying that if they did a phased approach and did a driveway entrance off of Halbium, the county would have no comment, as there's not, they have no concern with further traffic coming out of on Halbium. It was only on the Wallings Road. So this was actually the planners, one of the planners' suggestions. And Jody is quite clear. Jody, it's only on the key map. I couldn't find where I found that in text. It's on the key map of where it shows the red outline of the property and then the black hatch line of the conveyance. And at the bottom, it says density equals 34. And that's just Jeff's getting that out of our official plan in terms of, or zoning, I should say, of what the maximum would be. So, that doesn't mean that that's what would happen. They have to fit these buildings on. It could be, if they're doing pods of 12, it could be 24 in phase 1 or something like that. So I think I've heard from 3 councillors to ensure. Oh, Councillor Smith, go ahead.
Well, I had a couple of other questions or points that I'd like to put on the table and have considered here. It sounds like we're looking at updating a letter of intent with places for people. Is that correct? Yeah. So we've talked about this at council in the past, and I know at least some of us are concerned about the amount of the municipal contribution to the project. And, the existing letter of intent speaks to the municipality, providing the property at the sum of $2. But in addition, clause 5 references other municipal incentives, but they're not defined. And so if we're going to update and with places for people, going through the additional calculations they're going through in terms of the financial viability, it seems to me that we should be completely clear with this, new approach in terms of our municipal contribution to the project. I, for one, had felt that providing the property for the sum of $2 was a tremendous contribution from the municipality, from our taxpayers, and that any additional contribution in terms of waiving the usual fees and so forth that would be waived when a developer showed up with their own land. But in this case, where our taxpayers are contributing the land, it's always been my view that the additional contribution, waiving the various fees and such was inappropriate. We've contributed a lot of staff time to this already, as Jeff has noted, and so I think in that revised letter of intent, we should be very specific in that regard. And the second thing that I wanted to make sure,
Councillor Smith, why don't I have a second question or a third question after? Why don't we just deal with that, because there's a lot. I think Jeff would like to respond. Tamara might be able to respond in terms of the affordable housing program. So let's hold that your further thought and let's deal with this one in terms of the contributions. I know the letter of intent would change immensely because we are not constructing a turnaround. We're not closing a road. There's quite a few other things, but there are under the affordable housing program incentives. We still don't have like a hard and fast policy that says anything, but we have in past done zoning fees, building permit fees, if there was any minor variance fees and that type of thing. But the sewer connection fee was still not decided. We had not calculated that, and we could consider the land as a value as well. So Tamara, do you want to speak to Councillor Smith's in terms of letter of intent and what we have offered in the past as incentives?
I think you covered most of them, actually.
Okay.
This letter of intent offered things that are, I think, in some cases different than the policy that may come forward, but we're still working on that with the county and other tiers right now in social housing.
Jeff and then Deputy Mayor Kennedy.
Thank you. And so I think staff need a bit of direction with regards to the letter of intent, because the previous proposal, I can't remember what that was, September or something like that. It did look at the entire project and almost worst case scenario kind of thing. Council could direct staff to come in with a phased incentive approach too, and only focus on this project design option 1, which as mentioned, kind of delays the creation of roads, potential cul-de-sac, the Class EA, all of those other things. So staff need a bit of direction of how they should proceed with that letter of intent. Phased conveyances, does council still want to convey the entire property now, or just that portion shown in project option number 1? So I think that's where we need a bit of direction, so that we can come back with a letter of intent and then outline the costs that are going to be associated with that letter of intent.
Okay, so we'll go through the items one by one, but we'll stay on these incentives idea. Deputy Mayor Kennedy?
Yeah, just for clarification as well, the sewer connection fee, I brought it up at county council during budget deliberations that it was too onerous on the lower tiers to absorb that kind of cost. And there is a line in the draft budget to help support offset those costs. So pending final budget approvals, we don't have an answer yet whether that's going to go through or not. I did receive support from other mayors on that. So I'm hoping that it goes through, which will eliminate basically the sewer connection fees or greatly reduce them. So that's an important consideration as we move forward, not only for Dysart, but for Minden Hills and other municipalities going forward. It's a huge piece to bite off for 6,500 people in Dysart to offset those costs. It's as part of a county initiative. So just that's on the table. It hasn't been decided yet. The budget is not given final approval, but I think it's important that we realize that that hard cost may well be covered by the county, and these soft costs like permits and that kind of thing would be the lower tier responsibility. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. And you had brought that up, but it's just still on the table at the county. But this project would be going through the affordable housing program targets, and so it would come, that portion of it would come back to council to determine. There's a oh gosh, what's it called? A technical team that puts together, so including our CBO, our planner, and they put together and say, this is the maximum. So what got discussed the last time is this would be the maximum at 48 units if we waived the fee for 48 ERU sewer hookups. We weren't there yet, and we were never actually saying, there was no guarantee in that letter of intent that we would do that. We know the value of the land is coming first, and in fact, the Michelle Cormley at City of Kawartha Lakes had said, why don't you sell them the land and then waive the sewer? And we said, well, we're already this far down the road and we're trying to get the ball started with, so we're doing like land first. And so all those items would come back to council. So you can have a general line in your letter of intent without holding fast and true, I believe, to say this is the dollar amount of other things that we would be waiving. What will get taken out is construction of a road or the cul-de-sac and that kind of thing, which would have been rather costly to Dysart. So there'll be a whole new project or cost factor in there. Does that answer some of your question, Councillor Smith? And if go further and expand on your next question.
Well, it's a worthwhile discussion, and I'm just anxious to ensure that first off, places for people, but also our taxpayers at large understand that we are not prepared to provide the land for nothing and then waive all the fees that we would normally only waive when somebody else showed up and said, I've got a parcel of land and I want to do a development with some affordable housing on it. And so that, very general statement in section 5 of the letter of intent doesn't specifically say, what the municipal incentives, other municipal incentives are. We make it very clear we're going to sell them the land for $2. That's pretty specific. But the section 5 just refers to other municipal incentives. One could take a very broad interpretation and say that means that going to waive the sewer hookup fee through the county. We're going to waive the building permit fees. We're going to waive the charge that would be normal for our planning staff, et cetera, et cetera. And it's my perspective that the providing of the land, a very valuable amount for simply $2, is enough a contribution from our taxpayers, and that we shouldn't waive any additional fees. But if places for people want to buy the land from us at fair market value and then ask us to waive the fees, well, that's a different discussion.
So
And-
Councillor Smith, I think it's two separate things. You can have a letter of intent with that general line in it, but that any hard dollars, any waiving of any fees has to come back as a further council resolution. So it's not determined. It just means there could be other incentives. It's better to leave it general in the letter of intent. Nothing would be waived until it comes back to council after the technical team does the report on what the costs would be. A building permit is $9,222 specific, and council will specifically discuss and pass that resolution. So it's in the letter of intent, it's general, but it doesn't mean that it's a given, and it would come back for a resolution to council for discussion.
Okay, terrific. And,
Yeah.
with Jody on here, Places for People understands when they're doing their financial calculations on this on the viability of this new 34 unit development, that there may be no further contribution from the municipality beyond the providing of land at no cost for the sum of $2. The second point that I wanted to raise, we've talked about this with Places for People, and you've given us some, at least to my understanding, some assurance that you had the intention of making this housing available for residents of Haliburton County as your first priority, and hopefully that would be largely from Dysart. The folks at the City of Kawartha Lakes Haliburton housing team that have been to our council with other projects, haven't made that commitment to us. It's only been Places for People, and so. Before this is all finalized, before the land is transferred to Places for People for the sum of $2, I'd ask that Jody and her team secure in writing a commitment from the City of Kawartha Lakes Haliburton housing team that in fact you will have the authority to provide first priority in this affordable housing to the current residents of Dysart, as opposed to people that may be, from Lindsay or whatever, and would be moved up here if there was new housing available. I think given the taxpayer contribution that comes from Dysart, that's a reasonable request. And Jody, so you've said in the past your first priority would be Haliburton County residents. Do you think that's a reasonable commitment to secure from the City of Kawartha Lakes folks?
Well, I have a bit to say about that. I think what we need to remember is that the Affordable Housing Target Program, which will help fund this project, is a county initiative. So when you say it's only going to go to Dysart residents, that's going to be pretty tricky because the Affordable Housing Target Program applies to our county as a whole. And so I don't think I've ever committed to Dysart at all. I've said that we have the right to choose our tenants because we're not operationally funded by a government authority such as Whispering Pines or any of the other housing authorities. We have the right to select our own tenants. And that is one of our requirements is that they will fit in our housing that is located in Dysart et al. In Haliburton County, and they will have the appropriate supports they need or whatever we determine they need to fit within that housing. You also need to remember that all of the units are not going to be affordable units. In order to make the budget work, we are required to have a minimum of 30% of the units affordable, technically by legal definition. But the other units, some of them will be market and some of them will be above market because, as you know, you cannot find any market rent places in Haliburton County right now. So we understand with our budget that we will have we will have at least 30% of the units available to lower income individuals. But the whole the whole incentive package, the whole idea that the county came up with 2 or 3 years ago to create 750 units across the county is a county program. And quite frankly, when you keep talking about, we're getting the land for nothing, and we are very thankful for that. We were getting 2.5 acres, and now we're down to, I don't know what it is. So the price has changed considerably, but also, how many developers do you have lined up who are providing land in the present market to develop affordable housing? How many developers feel that they can do that for you? And how many developers are guaranteeing that they're going to look after those units for the next 25, 30, 60 years? I don't think, you can correct me, but I don't think you got a lot of people banging at the door, because you know what? It's really hard to do. And we do it because we're a bunch of volunteers making it happen. Nobody's making any money. And that's the only reason we can do it. There's not that many developers that can provide affordable housing and make money at it, in my opinion, and that are going to do it for the long term. So it's a little bit bigger picture than this parcel on Hallbeam Road. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Jody. Well said. And no, you are a different organization and unique to the county. This is, while it may sit in Dysart, this would be a county initiative. And you can choose your residents. And I'm really glad you clarified that it is not 100% of the units are not affordable units. To make it work, there has to be a mix. And that's a great answer. So thank you very much for that. I don't know, Councillor Clark, if you had your hand up or if you wanted to comment on that. We should sort of start to move on. We've got a few other things. Welcome, Councillor McKechnie. Sorry.
I
just want to see if Councillor Clark had his question. Yeah.
Yeah, my only opinion, or my only comment, is that Councillor Smith's comments are his, not the rest of council. At least my opinion is, I see the role of our councils to look at the longevity of this community, and we need affordable housing. And there is an investment that is required by the township to make that happen. It may cost a few extra dollars for the taxpayers at Conesus Lake, but it benefits the entire community and our future. So I just get upset when I hear somebody trying to nickel and dime our future. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Just keep in mind too, with now that's coming back, there's a change to the Maple Avenue Suites project. But what we did determine at that time was to waive we waived the fees for building permits, etc. But we only waived the fee for the ERU of the portion of units that were affordable. So as an example, this is in phase 1, Places for People determines they can do 2 pods and it's 24 units and they only do 30%. So that's 8. So it's 8 ERUs. It's not astronomical, and that will not be, the letter of intent does not bind us to not still have that negotiation. But really, when it comes down to it, 8 ERUs is not unreasonable, but it will be a further decision. So Jeff next, and then we need to go through the resolution to make sure it's clear.
Thank you. I think it's important to note that the Kawartha Lakes Housing Services, if this project decides to go through the incentive program, they monitor, administer, and enforce the incentive process. So really, I think the application would be made to them. It wouldn't be coming through us. And then it would eventually be brought to council's attention after the housing services kind of weeded through the process. So it might be worthwhile involving them in this process now, because eventually they're going to be the ones creating the facilities agreement that's gonna enforce these incentives with Places for People. So it might be worthwhile having a meeting with Places for People and the Kawartha Lakes Housing Services team just to kind of see what the actual process should be for this before coming back to council.
Well, yes and no, Jeff. I think we're far enough down the road, and I don't want to personally delay this any further. So what I'm thinking, our hands are both all tied, ours, Dysart's, Places for People, because it's not the correct zoning. It hasn't come to a public meeting, so and we have a lot of people from the public watching, neighbors in Halbium, neighbors on Wallings Road, people within the community are going to be able to have an opportunity to comment. So we need it to come to the public meeting process. I think we know the Affordable Housing Target Program, even though we don't have policies hard and fast set in place. I think we're familiar. We've had it with Maple Avenue Suites. We've discussed it. I'd really like to see this move forward. And I think the only way it's going to move forward is with that revised letter of intent. I think I saw support for rezoning of the entire property, with the conveyance being this section marked out that you have delineated, which turns out to be 0.92 acres. And let this come as an complete application and bring it to a public meeting. Well, first we have to bring back the renewed or the revised letter of intent. But then we can go forward with rezoning. Tamara?
I was just going to add on to Jeff's comment that I think it is important for us still to meet with the affordable housing people with P4P, just to make sure we do understand, because that can impact the letter of intent as well. I don't think it has, I think it could happen concurrently. It doesn't have to hold anything up, but I think it's good to start these things now and
Yes,
make sure.
I don't want to see another holdup.
No, I don't think that should create a holdup if we start that immediately and set something up. And I don't think it needs to hold any process up.
No. So is there anything, Councillor Smith, just one sec, I see you. I just want to ask Jeff, when you review the resolution that I have in front of me that was included in our package, is there anything different or any change that you would see that is needed here in terms of us reading the resolution as presented from the comments you've heard this morning? Or Mallory, I'll check with both of you because.
Well, I think staff do still need a bit of direction for that letter of intent. So this is going to be a legal document that's going to define those responsibilities. So is council looking at a phased incentive approach? How do they want to approach the affordable housing incentives? Does council want the portions of the land conveyed back to Dysart if this doesn't proceed? So that's the kind of thing that that facilities agreement that Kawartha Lakes Housing Services prepares for these incentives. If we don't go through that program right now, I think we should get the municipal solicitor involved so that he can prepare a document that would protect the municipality.
I did see Councillor Smith. I'm sorry. I just when a resolution is presented in front of me, I'm thinking that staff's supporting this resolution, and now I'm not really honestly sure what you're saying, Jeff. Mallory, and then Councillor Smith.
That part of the resolution says that staff bring back a report related to an updated letter of intent that supports the modified proposal. So do you have a modified proposal in here that you could bring back a letter of intent for? I'm concerned with this resolution being 6 pages long at this point. Are we ready for that full discussion right now today? Or do we need a fulsome report that focuses on the letter of intent specifically?
Ideally, we would have a new report, because right now staff don't have a site plan that we're going to work off of to try and come up with the details for a letter of intent. So we're kind of going off the discussion today. So it's really hard to pin it down and to outline those details in the letter of intent. So I can go back to the drawing board and look at what's existing and what was proposed in November, and then try and guesstimate off we discussed today and come back with a report, and we can discuss it.
That might be a good idea. I think perhaps the resolutions as it's written then is good for today's discussion, judging by what you're saying, but.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm reading in here and I don't see anything that is controversial or not anything that we've discussed. A letter of intent has to come back. We're not building a road. We're not doing anything. We're conveying 0.92 acres. And yeah, Councillor Smith, comments?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not, well, I guess a question here, the Places for People folks are professionals. It's noted in the report that they're professionals in terms of running this project. And that's terrific, but it means we need to be professional on our side. It means we need to spell out, some of the details of this arrangement. And, and appropriately in the early stages have been very vague. But as things get, further along, they need to be more definite. And if I was the professionals on the Places for People side of things, I'd like to have an understanding of exactly, what the municipality is going to be contributing. And so are we going to be giving the land for $2 plus a bunch of other incentives? Or are we going to say, no, the land is more than the equivalent of the incentives that would normally go for affordable housing? And the question of the public meeting. When is a public? We may not be able to set a date today, but we give time frame when there's going to be a public meeting, because there are a lot of people that have lots of questions about this, and they're legitimate questions. And and we've been vague so far in terms of defining exactly what our plan in terms of a commitment and support is. And I'm trying to get that more firmly established, which it seems to me to be a very reasonable thing to do as this project becomes more and more definite.
Faye, go ahead.
Well, Places for People has been around the affordable housing table from the giddy up. The problem is that we don't have what we need in order to bring a plan to that table where the technical team can figure out what the appropriate incentives are. So there's a process in place that I think will address all of those issues. The problem has been that because of council's inconclusiveness, we can't go to the table like any other developer can. Like, you have a process in place to deal with developers. If you treat us like a developer, then we can do what you need in order for us to do what we need. So it's just chicken and egg till the cows come home, to mix my farm metaphors, which is so very frustrating. So what I think you need to hear us say today is transfer the land, give us access to it through Halbeam so that we can begin to develop. Then it can go through all of the processes already in place that everybody goes through, and you can get the kind of confidence that you need. Anyway.
That's a great summary, Faye, and I agree. It has been a bit of a chicken and egg. So the question here today is access off Halbeam.
Yes.
I think everybody agreed to that. It has frontage on Halbeam for phase 1. Rezoning of the entire property with only the transfer of property to occur on the area as outlined. And the specific letter of intent will have vague wording such as other incentives. That would be a separate council decision at a separate time as the developer comes forward through the Affordable Housing Target Program, just like Maple Avenue Suites did, and it came as a presentation and we made decision that day. So I'm going to look to council to keep this ball rolling and to move on. And I don't see anything wrong in the resolution that I have forward in front of me. Jeff, I hope you are clear what council is expecting.
I don't have clarity, I'll admit, but I'll take a stab at it.
So what were you at? So what don't you have clarity on?
Well, it comes down to the letter of intent. So again, this goes back to this development relationship. The staff are usually not put in the position to develop a letter of intent, or if we are, we usually have a plan to prepare that on. So I think Places for People are right that they need some assurances for access and stuff before they can go forward and do their site plan. But ideally, staff would have something to base a letter of intent off of. We can come back with, as you mentioned, some vague wording that kind of delays some of the commitments in that letter of intent and just says council supports it in general and can review it at a later date. But I'll admit, next month I can come back for that discussion, but ultimately I'm probably going to be asking or recommending that the municipal solicitor review that letter of intent, because it's not something that I'm comfortable writing to ensure that we're protected, because I just don't know the details of this development right now.
Who wrote the first letter of intent? Places for People or us?
It was prepared by Places for People and I think reviewed by our solicitor at that time.
Right. So Jody, I know I see you, Councillor Smith, and I feel a sense of frustration myself. So if I'm feeling that, I'm sure everybody else is likely feeling that. And I don't want to go in circles. We know what we want. Jody and Faye, would you be willing to go back to the drawing board with what you've heard and drafting a letter of intent and submitting that.
Okay, there's a problem there because we don't have a lawyer at present.
Right.
So
okay.
what happened on the first one is we drafted something that's the first one you're looking at. But in the meantime, Jeff had your solicitor prepare a second one that never actually got finalized. And it was the one that had all the details in it that Councillor Smith is referring to. It had more specific details, but it didn't get signed, or it didn't happen. So I would prefer your solicitor prepare it, mainly because I don't have one. In the meantime, I'm looking for one to make sure we're comfortable with becoming the agent, which I think if you're not going to deed us the property now, then we have to become the agent, in my opinion. But I'm not a lawyer, and I be very honest about that. I just want to, like Jeff's trying to do, CYA, I believe it's referred to.
Right. So, and none of us are lawyers, but then Jeff, could our solicitor draft up something from what we've heard, and the portion where we refer to the, because we're not building a road, we're literally not doing anything, we're conveying land. It changes everything from the original intent. Basically, the letter of intent would be that we intend to donate or transfer land to Place for People for the sum of $2, and the other incentives under the Affordable Housing Program will be discussed at a later date. So we don't have to have those details in a letter of intent, and that Place for People become the agent.
Yeah.
That can be a separate resolution. The item of what incentives can be offered under the Affordable Housing Program can be mentioned, but it's a may. It's a may. It's not a that we must. But the original letter of intent was much more complicated because of road closing of Waldings Road, making it a dead end with a cul-de-sac and all kinds of other things. So I think our solicitor, and you and I can talk after, I think we have enough information to give our solicitor information to draft a letter of intent. Does other councillors feel that way? I know Councillor Smith, your hand was still up. Did you want to speak, Councillor Smith?
Well, I was going to suggest that, as would be the normal case, the proponent, the developer, would be preparing, a letter of intent or documents for our review and approval. I understand that Places for People has an issue because of their lawyer has stepped aside and they need to find a new one. So if our staff can direct our lawyer to prepare, that's just another contribution from our community towards this project. A contribution wouldn't normally be making, but I'd be okay with that. But again, I suspect that our lawyer is going to be looking for some specifics, and even though it's a letter of intent, the basic parameters need to be held down, and so I certainly have a view that, as I've said, if we're going to give the land, the other incentives are off the table. The Maple Avenue development, in that case, the developer showed up and said, "I own a piece of land. I want to build some housing," and we agreed to change the zoning to support that. And we would provide incentives, the normal incentives for affordable housing, because that developer showed up with a piece of land. And in this case, it's quite different.
Okay, so in this case, we know there's a unique circumstances. Places for People have found out Friday they do not have a lawyer. I'm going to suggest and look to the rest of council that we take it upon ourselves to request our lawyer. I'll work with Jeff to do it in bullet points. Our lawyer can do it in legalese to bring back to council to review. And then when council reviews that letter of intent, we can send it to Places for People, who by then will have been able to acquire and hire another lawyer for their review. And I think we need to move on with this. We have to take the lead here, or we are really running out of time. This is a valuable project. We've all been in support of this for, a year ago, September or something like that. It just feels, yes. So Faye, and so I'm going to look for a mover and seconder to read the resolution as presented, work with Jeff and see if, is there support for our lawyer to create the letter of intent? Is there support for that? Okay. So I see support for that. Councillor Wood Roberts, did you want to speak to it before I look for a mover, or you want to move it? She's moving. Okay. So moved by Councillor Wood Roberts. So I have a seconder for the resolution that was in our package. Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that the report dated January 25th, 2022 pertaining to project design and road access for an affordable housing development on the lands of the municipality of Dysart et al. In part lot 14, concession 8 in the geographic township of Dysart is received. And further that council acknowledge receipt of the letter and delegation from Jody Curry, President of Places for People, regarding the project design and road access for the Wallings Road Affordable Housing Development. And further that council agree to and select project design option number 1 as outlined in this report dated January 25th, 2022, being part of a phased development plan, and request that Places for People to submit an updated site plan based on this option. And further that council support in principle access onto Halbium Crescent for the proposed affordable housing development to support design option number 1, subject to approval of an entrance permit. And further that council directs staff to bring back a report related to an updated letter of intent that supports the modified proposal. And further that council permit Places for People to act as agent relating to the zoning bylaw amendment application D13-MV-2021-004 if Places for People are agreeable. The only change, I'm just going to look, I've read it, and I do have a mover and a seconder. I'm going to ask Mallory. The second last line says, and further that council directs staff to bring back a report related to an updated letter of intent. I'm wondering if we can, and further that staff should not just bring back a report, but should contact our municipal solicitor to draft a letter of intent.
Yeah, I have that in the minutes. But
should we put that in the resolution as well?
We could, yeah. So I could reword that to say to work with the municipal solicitor to revise the letter of intent or something.
I believe so. So if that's approved by the mover and the seconder, the second last, and further that council directs staff to, instead of saying bring a report back, would say, Mallory, to contact.
Oh, I'm just typing it, sorry. And further that council directs staff to work with the municipal solicitor to revise the letter of intent to support this proposal.
Okay, so that's stronger language. That's better direction than otherwise it's not Jeff bringing back. So is that okay with Councillor Wood Roberts and Councillor Clark moved in second? Okay, all in favor? Okay, and that's carried. It does feel like chicken and egg, Faye, but something's got to give here. The intent all along was for Dysart to support this proposal. The actual dollars and cents in terms of the affordable housing project target will come as a separate resolution. And I'm going to work with Jeff after today's meeting so that you're clear when we contact our municipal solicitor what exactly that we're asking. I think it's actually going to be a really pared down letter of intent at this point. Okay. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Faye.
Thank you.
Onward and upward. Okay. Okay, so next we'll move into our section, which is reports and recommendations from local agencies, boards and committees. And while some are meeting and some are not, I'll still go through the list and I will look to see if there was anything from the Harcourt Community Hall Board first. Councillor Donaldson.
No, there has been no meetings for Harcourt.
Okay. West Guildford Hall Board, Councillor Smith.
Same, we're not able to meet given the current facility restrictions. Thank you.
Okay, didn't know if people were meeting online or planning for eventual reopening. Again, the EOC did meet yesterday to go through the regulations as we're in a, we never remember what the name of it is. Are we in phase 2? Is it phase 3? Is it adapted stage 2 or whatever it's called or modified? So Andrea Mueller is a great contact for anything like that. So, or our fire chief, Mike Isles, if any of those boards or people are unclear as to what the dates are and what the requirements are. Rails End Gallery, Councillor Clark.
We're continuing to meet by Zoom. The pandemic has kind of shut down the visitation at the gallery for now, but it should open up again next week. They are working on the planning with the Arts and Crafts Festival for next summer. We've already got 22 artists confirmed who want to attend. And we would imagine to be further coming along. The shut off or the close for the application process for that is March 19th. A nice initiative through HCDC LIP grant, and that's dealing with a program called Look, Talk, and Make, and it's directed at long-term residents in the area. And it's programs or modules that are being made up to deal with, so many of our seniors who are isolated because of pandemic, to try and normalize some of their, or at least make more acceptable their isolation and get them involved in some creative process to kind of keep the more positive mindset, which is excellent stuff. And let's see. And I guess, yeah, and then the other stuff, we still are doing online through the Rails, and they still are doing, continuing to do online programs, ukuleles, some craft stuff, that type of thing, to keep the community engaged. But again, it is online, but it's keeping the community going. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to see them planning for the Arts and Craft Festival this summer because it's one of my favorite events to attend and shop at, and it's great. So I do have a resolution to receive the report, if I could. Deputy Mayor Kennedy and Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that Council acknowledges receipt of the January 2022 Rails and Gallery and Arts Center report. All in favor? Okay, carried. Anything from the BIA?
They had a Zoom meeting, which I was unable to attend because I was at work, but I know there was some communication with Barbara, I think, about their AGM that they normally have in February. I think Barbara had some communication with Nellie about that, correct?
So yes, actually the BIA was reaching out to see if they could actually hold their AGM in the council chambers here. And so at this point in time, it's not really the appropriate venue, just certainly for the way the room is set up to host virtual meetings.
So I'm not sure what the plan is going to be.
They are obligated to have an AGM, and is it not in their bylaws? Like it is a certain date in February? So that would be.
It's just yearly in February. So I mean, if they have to do it via Zoom, then that's okay. That's
sure.
Totally reasonable given all the circumstances.
Yeah. Okay. Also, the parking meters are we already made that resolution, so that's tied to when we go into stage 3. So we determined at our EOC meeting that we didn't need to make any change. They are still covered. So there's still free parking downtown, as well as Tamara, we got notification that the AGCO has extended the patio license for next year, regardless of whether we're out of the pandemic or it's an endemic or whatever it's going to be called by this summer. Yep. But so that you can let the restaurants know that did do patios. Council will need to determine then if we are back to paid parking and back to whatnot there, will we determine a fee for that ability to take up permanent parking spaces on the main street? The last 2 years, we did not. We didn't look at charging any fee for using those parking spaces. So I would encourage you to contact those restaurants or through the BIA and work through what that could look like. And council, just think about, are we waiving that fee for them, or is there a cost to that? Okay, what's next? Harvest Halliburton is Councillor Clark.
No meeting in January. So
fine. Yep. And the next 3, no meetings. Okay. I think we'll keep going if that's okay. Not ready for a break yet, I don't think. So we'll do Public Works. Our Director of Public Works is not able to be with us today. He has to be with family. So we'll just still go through the items, but I'm sure that I think we're going to bring John. There's John coming in. So the first one is the results of the paratransit truck. And actually, I don't know if anyone needs to speak to this. It's pretty straightforward, but if someone did, Barbara's familiar with this. It's about a year later than we had intended purchasing, I thought. But So I don't know, Barbara, did you want to speak to the purchase of the Dymo bus? No?
Yeah, so yeah, we had tendered for the procurement of replacing the Dymo bus. It was the second tender that we had sent out late last year. And so now we have some successful bidders here, and we're looking to award the contract to Geridian, and the bus will be funded through the dedicated gas tax funds that we receive from the province. So in terms of a net impact on the municipal operating budget, that would be zero.
Okay, so maybe a mover and a seconder to accept this tender, if I could. Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Wood Roberts. Be it resolved that council receive and acknowledge this report concerning the results of the request for tender number 2021-PW-18, being a tender to obtain one paratransit vehicle, and the council award the paratransit vehicle as outlined in the tender to Geridian, Ontario Inc. for a cost of $102,738 plus non-recoverable HST. All in favor? And that's carried. Under the financial impact, is there any value of the old one that we would sell on Gov?
Yeah,
Whatever?
so I would suspect that there will be some value add on the trade-in, and that has yet to be determined.
Yeah, and that would just go back into the reserve to build up to 10 years from now, buy another one.
Yeah, actually, yeah, absolutely. It would just be netted against the purchase of the new vehicle.
Great. Okay, the next item we have is John authorize the execution of household hazardous waste collection.
Good morning. Yes, so in October of 2021, Dysart's Committee of the Whole directed staff to issue a request for proposals for the collection, transportation, and processing of household hazardous waste. The RFP was developed in collaboration with the lower tier municipalities in Haliburton County. We issued it in November, closed in December. 2 vendors submitted bids, and Buckham Transport was selected as the preferred vendor due to its environmental practices, previous experience managing drop-off events, and its lower labor, transportation, and processing costs. That money had already been allocated in our 2022 environmental management budget. Dysart is proposing hosting 3 household hazardous waste days in 2022 on July 9th at Haliburton Landfill, August 20th at Harcourt Landfill, and September 17th at West Guildford Landfill. Those drop-off events are Dysart residents only. Hazardous waste from businesses and organizations cannot be accepted due to provincial regulations, but our website does list options for businesses and organizations to contact to arrange for their own processing of commercial hazardous waste. And then it is anticipated that in February of March of this year, staff from the 4 lower tier municipalities will present an intermunicipal agreement permitting any Haliburton County resident with a valid landfill identification card to attend any of the events in 2022. So there's potentially up to 14 events that residents in the county would be able to drop off their hazardous waste materials at.
Okay, any questions to John? Councillor Smith?
Yeah, thanks. John, you wrote there are 14 across the county, just 3 in Dysart. Is there, are the other municipalities maybe having 2 dates at some of their landfill sites, or are they, why are there so many more relative population wise in the other municipalities than there are in Dysart?
Mainly it has to do with historical practices that the other municipalities in some instances have done events that are in far remote areas of their communities, but maybe get 20 residents appearing at them. Our events are very well attended in Dysart and have some of the highest tonnage. So I think we've really are running our events quite efficiently, having the 3. So, I mean, I can't really speak to all the other reasons the other municipalities maybe host more, but I know our 3 events are well attended and we get extremely high tonnage rates from our residents dropping off materials.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good questions. Actually, us having 3 is maybe showing that we're more efficient considering we're the largest population. So, okay, mover and a seconder, please. Okay, Deputy Mayor Kennedy and Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-06 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a household hazardous waste collection, transportation and processing services agreement with Buckham Transport effective February 1st, 2022, be read a first, second and third time, pass, sign, and the corporate seal attached hereto. And further that council authorize staff to schedule 3 household hazardous waste days in 2022. All in favor? And that's carried. And you do a great job on social media and regular media as well. And so I'm sure that that will be very well advertised for everyone to attend. Next is the Food Waste Reduction Research Project.
Mm-hmm. So Dysart has a long history of supporting composting food waste through the sale of backyard composters and digesters and the upcoming Food Cycler pilot project. But before one kind of arrives at composting as a solution for food waste, the question really needs to be asked, why is food being wasted in the first place? In the waste management hierarchy, more emphasis should be placed on reduction over recycling or composting. And this is where a food waste reduction strategy comes into place. It really empowers the municipality to encourage residents to reduce the amount of food waste being thrown away, so there's less material that would need to be disposed of or composted. To ultimately help reduce food waste in our community, Dysart is proposing a research project for students of Fleming College's Sustainable Waste Management Program, facilitated by ULink's Center for Community-Based Research. This proposed project would incorporate 3 components: researching strategies to reduce food waste in homes through a literature review, researching best practices from other rural communities, especially those with seasonal populations, and then to plan a public education campaign to help reduce food waste. Historically, Dysart provides ULinks with funding of $1,500 for this type of research project, and that money has been allocated in our 2022 environmental management budget. This project is kind of starting rather quickly, but we're interested in having the results available so we could actually implement this sort of food waste reduction strategy coming into the high tourism season as we come into the spring, summer.
Okay, thank you, John. John, how does this tie into our food waste audit, or not food waste, just garbage audit that we were also doing?
Yeah, so it actually ties in really nicely. The waste composition study, we just completed our first one. I should be presenting results to Committee of the Whole in February. But even in that process, just anecdotally, there were instances where we would find, when I was there, we found 4 complete bags of brown sugar unopened that had been thrown out. Someone had gone ice fishing, had caught a fish and threw the entire thing in the garbage. Granola bars unopened, thrown in the garbage. This is the sort of food waste that really we want to be reducing. So the waste composition study we were doing was exploring food waste in terms of unavoidable food waste, maybe like eggshells, leftover food, untouched food. And so we'll have really good sense of what was happening in the wintertime around food waste actually appearing in our garbage stream here in Dysart.
We will be looking forward to that report. It's interesting what people throw out. And I know that this isn't on this item, but if you could also maybe just expand, because it's maybe on people's minds. It was on my mind this morning when I saw you to discuss the, what are they called? The kitchen countertop thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Food Cycler pilot project, I have a meeting with the vendor later on this week. But ideally, what will happen is once the 2022 budget is finalized, we'll begin promotion of the pilot project to secure our 100 participants. If we have more than 100 participants registered, then we will move to kind of a lottery system to select those participants. The idea is that we would take registrations probably for February, March, and then sell the devices to residents from Dysart Town Hall in late March, early January, and start the pilot, which lasts for 12 weeks. We would start it around Easter, so kind of the second week of April, and it would last for 12 weeks. We'll have all the promotional materials, the surveys ready to go to help promote the pilot project to our residents in the next few months.
Thank you, John. And what you're going to investigate and confirm with them is the question I asked is, so we would do it where we would make, get as much information out there to have people apply. If we get under 100, then all those people would get it. If we get over the 100 mark, say if we got 120, 130, he's going to see if we can take it'll be a lottery system. So it'll be the first 100 people. And then the remaining people could be contacted, you'll confirm, to actually purchase one at that reduced cost. So
Correct, yeah.
we'll know about that later, and our next budget meeting is February 11th. So anything else on this ULinks, Councillor Smith?
Thanks. John, I think this is a terrific initiative. We get great value from the ULinks reports in terms of the insight they provide and so forth. I wondered if you could make sure, as I recall, you participated in a presentation by the Trent University student who did the organic waste study for Abbey Gardens, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years ago. You recall that?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Could you make sure that these students get a copy of that report to kind of kick off their work? Because there's quite a bit of insight there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Any further questions to John? And if not, I'll look for a mover seconder to approve this resolution. Councillor Clark, and seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that council endorse a food waste reduction project facilitated by ULinks Center for Community-Based Research, and that council approve funding of $1,500 to ULinks Center for Community-Based Research for the facilitation of this research project. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. So that concludes Public Works. I'm just going to look at agenda timing. I'll look to see if anyone requires a break or if we want to do finance. So put up your hand if you request a break. Okay, perfect. Let's do finance, and we'll take a break after finance. So bylaw to provide an interim tax levy. Barbara.
Okay, yes, good morning. So we have here bylaw 2022-02, and this is a bylaw for an interim tax levy. We've established the interim tax dates as March 16th and April 13th. And as we speak, the tax bills are being circulated now, so they will be mailed out in the next few days. And basically, nothing else has changed on that bylaw, just establishing the due dates for our interim tax levy.
Thank you. Any questions to Barbara? Barbara, one thing we had talked about is more and more people to make people aware that they can pay their taxes online independently. It's not an automatic withdrawal, I believe, but I certainly know I pay mine online, and it was easy to set up as you do your online banking. So, again, reducing the extra steps that checks take when we receive them to have to, deposit them, et cetera. So just to, encourage, if anyone you're talking to, just, do you can pay your tax bill online? It's quite easy to set up. You need your roll number, and that becomes your account number. So.
Yeah,
okay.
Actually, as far as electronic payment, we've had very good success over the last year, and, we can thank COVID for that. However, it is very typical of the finance group to educate ratepayers on how they can pay their tax bill, and encourage them to hop onto some of the pre-authorized programs.
Absolutely. You just need like I say, you need your roll number. Okay, so I'll have a mover and seconder for this resolution, please. Councillor Wood Roberts, and seconded by Councillor McKechnie. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-02, being a bylaw to provide an interim tax levy and to provide interest and penalty to be applied on taxes, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached here too. All in favor? Okay, carried. And next is one we always do this time of year too, authorized borrowing.
Yes, so we have bylaw 2022-03, and this is a bylaw to authorize borrowing for 2022. Essentially, it gives the municipality some leverage to borrow in the interim of collecting property taxation. So here at Dysart, we're very fortunate that we do have a healthy cash flow to carry us for the municipal operations.
Okay, any questions on this? Pretty standard. We do it every year. Councillor Smith?
Thank you. Barbara, does the healthy cash flow, does that mean that we have been able to continue the past practice of not actually exercising this right to borrow money?
Correct. Yeah, actually, we had a very good collection year on our property taxation in 2021.
It's a just in case bylaw. County passes the same thing. We do it just in case, but we were pretty proud of our tax collection department that we don't need to use it. Okay. Yeah. Do mover seconder then for that? Deputy Mayor Kennedy and Councillor Smith. It resolved that bylaw 2022-03 being a bylaw to authorize borrowing from time to time to meet current expenditures during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached hereto. All in favor? Okay, carried. Quarterly meter sewage report.
Yes, so we finished the year out just slightly under 2020. Again, you know, we're seeing the impact of COVID here on some of our meter sewage revenue. It's just shy of 1.6% over 2020. Definitely a huge drop from 2019. You're looking at about 18% lower than 2019.
So do you think there's a combination too of some of those facilities might be doing some cost saving measures in terms of their appliances or things like low flow toilets or low flow shower heads? I don't know, in certain sort of the apartments or even at the schools. I don't know. So there's a combination of lower number of people due to COVID in the last 2 years, but also some of the facilities could be making some upgrades to watch their consumption.
That could be part of the combination. I do know in some of our larger facilities at the school a few years ago, they went through a cost savings measure for some of their equipment.
Yeah, I believe so. Okay, so mover and seconder for this report, please. Councillor McKechnie and seconded by Councillor Wood-Roberts. Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the quarterly metered sewage readings report for the period ending December 31st, 2021. All in favor? Okay, carried. And lastly, this is an interesting one. I meant to bring that up to, well, Councillor Wood-Roberts, you would have seen that, but my Main Street Community Activator Program application.
Yes, so staff have been researching the My Main Street Community Activator program. And so some of the projects that would be considered under this grant is focus on the York Street area, which would include color changing soffit lighting at the Rails End Gallery, solar powered outdoor workstations, metal picnic tables, both accessible and non-accessible, signage on tables to highlight local attractions, and year-round lighting display on York Street. So the total grant is up to $250,000. And just looking at some of the proposed initiatives here, we would be looking at making an application on the higher end. So staff are seeking support from council on the project.
Okay, is there any comments on this or any ideas? I was just wondering how if there was anything in there that fit in with, and maybe it wouldn't because this is for, it's a, you know, Main Street, but due to our Head Lake Park master plan, was there anything that we could tie in there or in and around the Welcome Center that we could tie in? Or maybe that's where some of the picnic tables would go. I don't know. Okay, Tamara's nodding. So if you don't mind, councillors, I'm going to go to staff first and then open it up to councillors. Tamara?
Yeah, that is the intent is it's supposed to be a placemaking grant and to support downtown businesses. And as you know, York Street's part of the downtown. So the lighting display they're referencing is, I don't know if you've seen it in other places, but sometimes they might have like a sculpture that's really well lit that people will go to, they're attracted to go take selfies and put them on social media and that type of thing. So there's an opportunity there for them to work with the Cultural Resources Committee to perhaps, if the grant came to fruition, to come up with something that's very localized, local and beautiful. In terms of the lighting display, Lori's looking to be able to address some of the cultural events that happen throughout the year by the change in colors and the soffit lights. And we're looking at doing soffit and fascia replacement there this year. So it would be the opportune time if we could get the money to do that. She's speaking to the Festival of Lights in terms of more multiculturalism and so forth, also in terms of lighting displays and colors. The other thing, as you noted, the Head Lake Park. So we're looking at basically the section from basically the Welcome Center down to the library. So when we talk about the round tables, we've got some of the metal tables in the budget already for the Welcome Center, but this would basically buy a lot more of those so that we could have more seating along that whole area and help support whether it's people eating at local restaurants outside or people looking for a place to work outside with Wi-Fi. We're also looking at umbrellas because we recognize there's a lot of people ask for shade, and those would be very solid type of construction that stands up to being outside. Some of the Wi-Fi tables they're looking at, they can be quite pricey. So depending on cost, they could be up to $25,000, but they're still pricing those out and looking at options. But some of those have like built-in umbrellas that have solar panels in them so that it charges the table at the same time and has Wi-Fi or connections for charging your devices or computers. So there's just a lot of it is still in the process of trying to get prices, but this has to be submitted by Friday. So we just met as staff very quickly, Jennifer and Andrea Mueller and I with Lori Jones, and just came up with this, trying to think of things that we could do without, because it doesn't cover in-ground work. So it's above ground infrastructure.
Right.
So we're looking for things that we could do quickly, price quickly, and still make an impact on the park and the downtown.
Excellent. Comments to this grant? Deputy Mayor Kennedy and then Councillor Clark.
Excellent project, Tamara and staff. Just one question I had was, would something like those round metal tables also be eligible for places like the recreation centers at Harcourt and West Guildford? For a couple of those, or so it has to be all concentrated in one location?
Yeah, this one focuses on the downtown, but perhaps if we got them, the ones that we have in the budget could be displaced elsewhere, or I'm sure we could work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, and then to Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, this initiative shows great support for what we're doing with the Head Lake Park, and especially with the center there. There's going to be a lot more emphasis on use of that park, and this just reinforces it as a gathering point for our entire township. So it's a good initiative that we're going to get good payback on. Thank you.
Okay, and then to Councillor Smith.
Yep, thank you, and thanks to Deputy Mayor for thinking of West Guildford and Harcourt. We have downtowns; they're just small, but I understand the need to focus this on the large downtown in terms of the village of Haliburton. But as part of it seems to be promoting the history of our community. Hopefully, the aspects of the community you choose to highlight there would be representative of all parts of Dysart. I think of the rich history, for example, of Haliburton Forest and the lumbering that went on up there for literally decades. Even the story of hunting and fishing and why that's important to our community, so that visitors from elsewhere can gain some appreciation to the that broader aspect of our history and the traditions that continue today. Thank you.
Tamara?
Yeah, I agree. And that's another component of the project that if we were successful, we'd suggest putting it through the Cultural Resources Committee as well for input, but we would pass along those sentiments as well, that we'd like to include the entire community, because part of it might even be like, say, a simple sign onto the tables that let people know where the sculpture forest is, or let people, like you said, major attractions, but throughout the whole community.
Thank you. Well, this is a great example of, it might have seemed like bringing on a new staff to be a procurement person in a municipality of our size, but this might have never come across another staff member's desk, or it might have come across somebody who said, I don't have time to deal with this. So it's fabulous that we have Jennifer on staff to be able to apply and manage these projects. So this is great news. Okay, so do I have a mover, pardon me, to support this resolution? Okay, Councillor Wood Roberts and Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that council acknowledge this report concerning the My Main Street Community Activator Program application, and the council authorize staff to proceed with an application to the My Main Street Community Activator Program based on proposal contained within the staff report. All in favor? Okay, that is carried. And I think this is an opportune time to take a 15-minute break. So that takes us to, what time? Takes us to 10:50. So we'll take a 15-minute break, and you can just turn your cameras and volume off for now. Thank you. Okay, we're back in session, and we'll be working through our administration section. So first up we have is a letter from the Haliburton County Farmers Market thanking us for the use of the space of Head Lake Park, and it sounds like they had a fairly successful summer. I know I was there several times. So really it's just a letter to receive. If there's anyone that wants to comment on that, they can, but if not, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Clark to move. And second by Councillor Wood Roberts. Actually, it's really nice to receive a thank you letter. It's nice to see a report from that. So, and I hope they continue and grow next year. So it was moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Wood Roberts. Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the letter from Lauren Phillips on behalf of the Haliburton County Farmers Market Association, thanking council for hosting the 2021 Farmers Market in Head Lake Park. All in favor? And that's carried. Next, we have an update on a procedural bylaw, and that was really all previously discussed. It pertains mainly to the change of the election cycle and the dates of when a new council will come. There's not going to be an awkward November meeting, thank goodness. They finally realized that. And so if there really should be no questions, as this has been discussed. So I would just look to a mover and seconder for this bylaw. Councillor Smith, Deputy Mayor Kennedy. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-04, being a bylaw to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of meetings, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached here too. All in favor? Okay, carried. And next we have the authorized sale of land to Nathan Petrini. again, already been discussed, so it's really just moving the bylaw forward. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Councillor McKechnie and Councillor Donaldson, is that a hand? It's okay. Be resolved that bylaw 2022-05 being a bylaw to authorize and confirm the sale of land described as part lot 11, concession 9 being part lot 15, plan 19R-4878, and part lot 12, concession 9 being a portion of part 9, plan 19R-2953 in the geographic township of Dysart, United Townships of Dysart et al. Be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached here too. All in favor? Okay, carried. And an update on the internet telephone system. So Mallory, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I won't talk long on this. I just wanted to give council an update because at the committee of the whole meeting on December 7th, council recommended CITL Canada, which is going to be the proponent for our internet telephone voting. And of course, we had to then wait for the other councils to approve in Haliburton County. So this is just an update to let everyone know that all the other councils did approve the same vendor. So that's good. So we're moving forward and we're going to execute an agreement and start our first meeting soon and get going on that. So that's all it is.
That's great. This will be your first election as clerk. So I wish you well and I hope it goes smoothly. And it's nice that you're going to have, your first election going into it with a system like this, but you also will be working with the clerks of the other township and support through this company CITL as well. So
Yeah.
hopefully it goes well. Any questions to Mallory? Okay, mover seconder, please. Councillor Wood Roberts and seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the update of the final results of the RFP for an internet telephone voting system provider for the 2022 municipal and school board election. And further that council authorizes the mayor and municipal clerk to execute an agreement with CITL Canada Incorporated, the successful proponent of the RFP 2021-ADM-16 of internet and telephone voting system in the amount of $2.75 plus HST per voter as per the terms and conditions set out in the proposal. All in favor? And that's carried. And that concludes administration, I believe. So we'll move on next to our planning section. Just to give council a little update before we move into planning, we'll bring our planners. We're going to have a little bit of some long breaks today due to some delegation and close that could only be at certain times. So we'll actually be like taking a fairly lengthy lunch hour, but we'll be enclosed, which would be nice. You can get caught up on some other things, but we couldn't keep the meeting flowing. Is just in order of accommodating some people in closed session. So let's see where we're at with planning. Jeff, I've got Jeff. Is Chris coming in for anything today? Yes, he is. Okay. So let's just see who's up first. Hiroki and McKinnon. This is a long time coming. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is a bit of a housekeeping item. Bylaw 2022-7 is a bylaw to deem lot 88 on registered plan 479 to allow to merge with the original road allowance, which was closed and conveyed by bylaw 2020-68. So a while back, Mr. McKinnon made joint application to purchase the original road allowance adjacent to his property. At their meeting in October 2020, council passed a bylaw to close and convey the road allowance. However, at that meeting, a deeming bylaw was not passed. So we're kind of bringing it back right now just so that can get cleaned up. Staff certainly recommend approval of this deeming bylaw, and I think a closing date for this file has been set for sometime later this week. So I think that should make everybody happy.
So this is a housekeeping to deem the shoreline to the main property.
Not the shoreline, it's an adjacent original road allowance. So this is an original road allowance that leads to water. But given
Okay,
that
this is-
subject lands are on a plan of subdivision, they cannot merge with that original road allowance without this deeming bylaw. So
Right, okay.
the applicant
So
on
we
the other
need to
side of
just-
the road allowance already had a deeming bylaw, so this one got missed. So yeah, we're just kind of bringing that back to correct it.
So after this, the original road allowance that these two people are purchasing can close?
Yeah, the closing date's been set for later this week.
That's fabulous. That's okay. Mover and a seconder on this? Councillor Smith and Deputy Mayor Kennedy. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-07, which is a bylaw to deem lot 88, registered plan 479 in the geographic township of Havelock, to not be within a plan of subdivision for the purpose of section 50-3 of the Planning Act RSO 1990, be as amended, be read a first, second, and third time, past signing the corporate seal attached thereto. This bylaw is intended to allow lot 88, registered plan 479, to merge with the road allowance, which has been closed and conveyed pursuant to bylaw 2020-68. All in favor? Carried. Lands of LaRue.
Yes, thank you. So Mr. and Mrs. LaRue have submitted an application to purchase the shore road allowance in front of their two adjacent properties on Redstone Lake. They didn't indicate why they wanted to purchase the shore road allowance. There's currently a dwelling, a frame shed, a garage with a loft located on the subject lands. The shed is partially located on the shore road allowance and does not comply with the water setback. Therefore, staff have recommended a condition that it be removed or brought into compliance with the zoning bylaw. The dwelling, which is located on the shore road allowance, was rebuilt in 2003 and has legal non-complying status with regards to the water setback. The survey does indicate a proposed addition that doesn't appear to comply with the side lot line setback. The process for this, the building department will review that site plan for conformance with the bylaw at the time of the building permit application process. So staff requests direction with regards to the shed and approval to process the application.
Okay, I just had one question. So they're looking to purchase the shore road allowance across both parcels, but they are
Correct.
still two separate parcels. So the other vacant lot is could still potentially have a second dwelling on it. Even
Correct.
though it shows that their driveway, I mean, they own both pieces, so they can encroach on their own property, so it's not technically encroachment, but it clearly indicates on the one parcel that the driveway goes over to the other piece and there's some stairs and whatnot.
Yeah, they appear to, according to our records, they're separately conveyable parcels. So but you're right, there does appear to be some encroachment matters between the two parcels. I think that those would have to be resolved by the property owners before conveyance.
Yeah, but at this point, it doesn't really affect the purchase of the shore road. And the only other thing, so you said that you didn't know why, but it does show, it just is something that comes up in my mind, maybe other counselors saw it as well. It shows the proposed addition exactly where it says the approximate septic location. So where on the parcel that they have would they have their septic bed? It looks like a fairly narrow lot.
That's a great question. It's not information I have today. All that would be figured out during the building permit process. So prior to obtaining an addition, they would have to go through and obtain a septic permit and go through that review process.
Okay, so I mean, really, it's not for today. It's just, and I knew it wasn't. It's just a question I had. If they go to get a building permit for this proposed addition, there's certainly some things that they'd have to be aware of. Any questions for the purchase of the shore road allowance, though, Councillor Smith?
Not a question, and thank you for asking about the septic, because I was also puzzled about be building a top of your existing septic system. But staff is looking for direction. Obviously, the shed ought to be removed or brought into compliance. It can't stay where it is.
Yes. Yep, I think there's concurrence with that. Okay, so mover and a seconder then? For this, Councillor Smith and Deputy Mayor Kennedy. Be it resolved that council approves for processing the applications by Mr. and Mrs. LaRue to purchase a portion of the shore road allowance along the shore of Redstone Lake in front of their two adjacent properties, part lot 24, concession 7, block 2, and part lot 24, concession 7 in the geographic township of Guilford. As per section 3.2.7 of the official plan, the shed shall be removed or brought into compliance with the zoning bylaw 2005-120. The lands are declared surplus. All in favor? Carried. Next, what I think a lot of people have been waiting to listen in our meeting, and a report which I asked to come to council in light of all the many emails and phone calls that we all received, as well as some social media comments. And so staff were asked to do a report on where things are with Dysart in terms of this. So what I'm going to do is turn it over to staff first and to comment on your report.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to try and give you some information. Then at the end, I'm happy to answer any questions. Due to recent events and concerns expressed in relation to local wetland activity and turtle habitat, staff were requested to bring this report forward for council consideration. Please note that letters of concern received as of the date of this report have been attached to this report for council consideration as well. So it appears based on the comments that there's been some filling of wetland within the vicinity of Galert Road and Grass Lake Road. These alleged actions could have serious detrimental impacts on species habitat, the adjacent roadway, water quality for Head Lake, and other environmental impacts. I think the official plan policies are clear in the protection policies. It's the official plan states that protection and enhancement of the environment is a primary objective of our official plan. Based on this objective, there are numerous policies sprinkled throughout the official plan designed to protect natural heritage features, wetlands, lakes, habitat. These policies, which are vital to the protection of these features, are strictly enforced at the time of development control, which is mostly the processing of planning applications. Having said that, currently there is no tool in place that enables staff to enforce these actions. So there's no law, no bylaw. Unless the official plan policies are implemented by a bylaw or some other development agreement or other agreement, they are only addressed at times of development. It should be noted for council's attention that the Municipal Act provides authority to council to pass bylaws to prohibit and regulate filling and site alteration. So the authority is available. Furthermore, council has the ability to pass bylaws to implement the direction of our official plan, such as the zoning bylaw being the biggest example there. In the report, I briefly touch on a couple of other enforcement options that may be available at other levels of government. Specifically of note is the county are currently in the review process to update their existing shoreline preservation bylaw to include site alteration regulations. This has not been approved by council yet, or by county council, I should clarify. But it appears, just reading it, that the proposed bylaw is currently drafted would regulate instances like this and prevent site alteration within 30 meters of lakes, water courses, and wetlands. Again, I just want to clarify that this hasn't been passed, and the mayor and deputy mayor may be able to elaborate on that process a bit better than I, because I haven't been able to follow along entirely. But that's the basis of my report. If the mayor and deputy mayor don't want to comment on that, I'm pleased to answer any questions that I can related to the report and the public comments received today.
I think we definitely want to comment. This is our opportunity. I know people are listening. It's our opportunity to speak up. And for those people who were listening to the meeting of the shoreline bylaw a week ago Monday that the county had, which was a 5-hour meeting, not including breaks. It was very lengthy. We went around in circles. We talked an awful lot at the very beginning about bodies of water to include wetlands. The consultants, Hutchinson Environmental, were suggesting that we do include wetland and ponds, but that ended up being quite a bit of conversation. That bylaw, for people to insinuate that Dysart isn't doing anything, I know the wheels of of government in general, but municipal government may seem like they work painfully slow, but that's exactly really what we did when we delegated that authority to the county to look at strengthening the shoreline bylaw. That's exactly what we were talking about last week. So for Dysart to undertake any bylaw of their own at this point wouldn't make sense until we see what happens at the county. I don't know if we're any further ahead. I read one comment on social media that said the meeting seemed like a bit of a Monty Python skit. And at times during the meeting myself, I felt very frustrated that we were, you know, one step forward and two steps back, which is not the right direction. There's a lot of more questions that day that came up than there were answers, and there was very few things that we sort of landed on a consensus. So I'm really can't say today, I don't know, or Deputy Mayor Kennedy will probably want to speak to this, of where we feel we landed at the end of that day. But, you know, when we received information, I first saw on social media about the filling in of this particular property in question about a week ago Saturday. By Monday, I believe I had requested that this come on this agenda to further explain of what our role and responsibility and authority is at this point. We do care. I did encourage people to contact the ministry. The ministry was contacted and filling was ceased at that time. So, you know, there was action that was taken place as to what the protocols that are in place right now. I've also contacted the county to talk to them to see what their comments are in terms of not necessarily the natural heritage, but the fact that if someone is doing work on their property, which negatively impacts drainage flow from in that area. But the county is aware. They've also been sending people who have comments to the ministry. There's a culvert under there, and at this point, being winter, they have no concern at this point that there is flow there. The main concern is actually the other way. There's a side on the north side of the road of County Road 1. The water flows that direction to the south side, and there's often a beaver dam that gets blocked. Beaver does his little work in that area on the north side, and so the county has to check there so the water flow goes from north to south. So we are all aware, we do care, we are doing what we can at this point. And you know, where the county lands, we will see if it becomes that is what the intent is. It's called a shoreline preservation bylaw, but it is the site alteration bylaw. And I won't speak too much to where I stand on that. I spoke a lot, so did Deputy Mayor Kennedy last Monday. So Deputy Mayor Kennedy, do you want to add anything at this point?
Yeah, it's the shoreline protection bylaw is definitely a heated and controversial one, and lots of unanswered questions that need to be answered before we move forward. This is actually what we're talking about today is a site alteration bylaw. It's a lot more complicated than what a lot of the members of the public believe it should be. I get my back up when I hear that they demand action be taken. I like the ones that say urgent consideration should be taken. I think that's where we're at with the shoreline. And it's not just this one. There's also we're in contact with people in the east. There's provincially significant wetland on Elephant Lake, where there's a development right beside it. So it is front of mind, and we'll keep plodding forward. And this is another example of the speed of government is slow, but this is a complicated process. So bear with us, folks. We're aware of it. The Ministry of Environment has shut down the job, so some of the tools in the toolbox are working, even though they may be late to the game. But we will continue to work forward on this file. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And also to keep in mind too that, like I said, to get this on our agenda, to have some conversations, see what we can do and where we're at. It's literally just been a week, so that's good. We do know though that there has been infilling of that area for some time, and really this is the first that I have received emails or complaints on this property. So, not that anyone was turning a blind eye, but without that site alteration bylaw, the person was able to do what they were doing. And we didn't, when I said we didn't have the jurisdiction, we didn't have the jurisdiction to do anything at our end to enforce. So all we could do is get them to the ministry at this point. And so I hope that clears a few things up. You know, like I say, I don't know where we're going to land with the county. One of the things that I was saying is that we spent probably 3/4 of the meeting talking about the details in the permit process. So I've been fairly vocal about looking at a possibility of more of a compliant process of what is the same way as our tree bylaw is right now. You don't need a permit. You just can read the bylaw. You go measure the tree, and if it's greater than 5 centimeters at a certain height, then you just can't cut it down. So there are ways, there are other examples that we really haven't looked at the county in terms of bylaws in other municipalities. I just heard of one, you know, in Gravenhurst that I was told of this morning. So our county planner referenced his previous employment in Seguin Township. And so we were sort of all, the county councilors were like, oh, we didn't know he had as much knowledge. He's a new employee and new to the process. So, you know, we'll see where we land on that. And if the county bylaw is either defeated or never comes forward or is contested, then the municipality can do something on their own. But the thought was 3-4 years ago that we'd all work together, all 4 townships would work together. We all are in the same geographic area and have the same concerns to protect our water, whether it's a lake, river, or stream, wetland, or pond. So let's see where the county lands, and the clock is ticking because it's an election year, and so we only have so long to go forward on this. So is there any questions from other councillors? I know you've all received comments. Yeah, so Councillor Wood Roberts and Councillor Clark and Councillor Smith.
I have a couple points. I just have a question for Jeff. When was this wetland mapping done? The most recent that declared this a significant wetland?
Thank you. Well, there's nothing currently deeming it provincially significant, but going back to Dysart's environmental protection area mapping, it was done in the early 1990s, I believe. I don't know when the county's wetland mapping was created. The official plan does outline the process if someone questions the boundary of an EP area. The process would be to have a qualified professional assess that wetland and flood hazards, and then accurately delineate that wetland boundary, and then they could come through a zoning bylaw amendment process, which you'll see we're going to get one here in the near future, and we've done a few over the last couple of years. But yeah, with regards to the data, our EP boundary data is from roughly the early 1990s.
Okay, thank you. So this problem of flooding on this area has been going on since 2006. I think we need the county actually to really step forward. The water has continued to rise there for some reason, whether the outflow is blocked in the property on the high school side. The rail trail built a big parking lot. They've widened and significantly changed the rail trail, which that water course runs through at some point, because it all comes down from Mountain Street. It all ran either into Barnum Lake or Head Lake. The high school put in a soccer field, and that was all marshy area there as well. So I don't think, excuse me, that area of the county road from where the Skidoo crossing is right down to almost the doctor's office parking lot is safe. In the fall, when it rained significantly, it was flooded over the whole road. The road is not wide enough for safe pedestrian traffic, which is leading to our schools, our healthcare center, and our hospital. And, you know, I think the county, in conjunction with the municipality, if there's anything for us to contribute to this, has to improve that roadway, which would increase or improve the water flow. That property has been flooding more and more and more since 2006. It was first brought up. That is 16 years. That's been let go a very long time. That was originally a pasture. That was a meadow where there were cows, you know, many years ago. So it's not a natural thing. It's been caused by alteration in the land and the flow of the water.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wood Roberts, for that. Councillor Clark, and then next will be Councillor Smith.
Jeff, the definition used to define wetlands, you said like some of this initial stuff goes back to the 1990s. Has there been any change in the definition of wetlands since that time?
Sorry, Councillor Clark, just to clarify, it wasn't the definition of wetland that was implemented in 1990. That's when the municipality implemented their environmental protection zone. So if you look at our zoning mapping and our official plan mapping, the green areas that are identified as environmentally protected areas, that was completed in the early 1990s. We have not undertaken any studies since that time to update that mapping. But there are some initiatives going on right now that council may wish to be aware of. The county is currently doing some LiDAR mapping, which will be extremely effective in this regard. And the county is also in a partnership, I believe, with the Land Trust, and currently going back and looking at the boundaries of these wetlands. So there is stuff happening behind the scenes to more accurately delineate these boundaries. As I said before, until that's done, I think it's important to protect what we have. And there is a process if a property owner questions that boundary to further or more accurately delineate that boundary.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That was my concern, is that we have identified all those potential wetlands or environmentally sensitive areas, and as the science progresses, sometimes there is a change in terms of what you're coming under the scope of that. I guess my concern was, like, you're talking 30 years since that initial analysis was done, and has there been any advancement in the science, and therefore I need to relook at, are we identifying everything that is sensitive that should be controlled or managed somehow? So anyways, thank you.
That's a good point. I think, as Nancy mentioned, sometimes the landscape changes a bit too. And it's quite common during our planning development application approval process to have new wetlands identified on a property, and where previous wetlands existed, have that further defined to be more of a dry land area. So yeah, it's changing. Again, I keep going back to the process as outlined in our official plan process, and the importance for that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Jeff, for bringing up the work that's being done at the county level as well, that we would be able to be shared with all the municipalities. Councillor Smith, to you.
Yeah, thank you. Clearly there's some misunderstandings here, a lack of information that caused literally dozens of people to send off emails. People have gone on social media and said things that may or may not be true, and we don't know in many cases. I guess first, I got several questions, but first, you talk about the county and the shoreline preservation bylaw and the discussion that's been going on there for 3 or 4 years. Is there a time frame that's going to conclude? I guess I'm really asking, how long should we wait for the county to reach a conclusion on something they've been evaluating for 3 or 4 years or more before we, as a local municipality, take some action to protect the wetlands and other resources in our community?
So that's a good question. After last Monday's meeting, when we adjourned at 3 o'clock or something like that, there was no conclusive, like, oh, well, we'll meet again at this such and such date. It's not on our agenda tomorrow. We meet tomorrow for council. So it's really up to us or to the warden, but we can request that come back in a timely manner. The warden did reference the fact that she didn't want this to go on and on, although it is. I don't know what would come back to the county after the way we left our meeting. Like I say, there were so many things that were the questions that came up. I believe Councillor Moffat said she feels there was more questions by the end of the day than there were answers. So, I would suggest what the timeline is. I did reference the fact that we all know it's an election year, and that at a certain point, if we can't get something moved forward, or if a bylaw doesn't even come forward for us to vote on, like we haven't even had a vote. We haven't had a bylaw that we all say, yes, this is the draft 3 or 4 or 5 bylaw that we can actually just, put your hand up or say yay or nay. So I would say really the timeline would be this term of council.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I don't know, Deputy Mayor Kennedy, do you want to, what are your thoughts? Because that's just my personal thought.
Yeah, the way we went round and round on last Monday and with the warden's comments that she wants to move this forward, I suspect, and then we asked staff to bring back Steve Stoner, the planner with his experience from Seguin Township. Within the next couple of months, I would think we should see something in a draft form, I would hope. And then make the decision whether we're going to go forward or maybe defer it to the next council. That's getting to that point in time where we start to move into lame duck. That's looming and coming closer and quicker. So I'm not sure. And I sympathize with Councillor Smith that at some point, I think municipalities should act on site alteration bylaws, perhaps with a limit, though it only affects properties that have natural hazards or that type of thing. So it's not everybody having to do a site that doesn't have environmental protected areas on it has to move forward with that initiative. Only there may be a limiting site alteration bylaw. But I think the clock's ticking on it, and decision we should probably make before the end of term of this council, so that staff can start to prepare options for us to look at a local level. I don't see any problem with us working concurrently once we get a better idea of where county council's going, rather than wait for them to make a decision and then us start. I think once we see where this thing might be heading at the county, that we should start working on our own lower tier with staff to get some gathering of information from other areas that have site-specific site alteration bylaws. If that makes any sense.
No, thank you. Councillor Smith, did you want to ask?
Yeah, well, thank you. That is encouraging. I mean, it's tremendously frustrating to lots of people as to the slow pace at which this county shoreline discussion is going on. It's just taken way too long. Whatever your position on it is, whether you're supportive of it or whether you're against it, you have to see something concluded. So then you can say, okay, well, here's what we got. Are we happy with this? Are we unhappy with it? But just the inertia that seems to be so much a part of it right now is frustrating. And here's another example of the community getting engaged and wondering why something is happening, why something is allowed to happen. And, we right now, is largely in this discussion so far, have said, well, we're waiting on the county. As the deputy mayor has said, maybe we need to draw a line in the sand. Maybe, you've got a county meeting tomorrow. Maybe at our next committee of the whole meeting, we have a report, this report on this topic, come back and say, okay, here are our options. Here are the things that we could do in Dysart. And, we don't need to create another shoreline bylaw, but we do need to do something to end this type of destruction of a heritage site, or at least we need to have a discussion about that. And as Councillor Wood Roberts has pointed out, we've got a landowner here who is being abused in social media. And the things that have happened in terms of flooding in this area have been going on for nearly 15 years. And there's been lots of other developments around here, and it's not unique to this site. The reality is that in some parts of the world, rivers have gotten wider because developments have taken someplace. Other places, things that used to be big rivers have turned into small creeks because of development. And I don't think any of us know how much of this much of this change is driven by one thing versus another. But probably nobody objected when the rail trail was building a bigger parking lot there. Maybe part of the cause of problems. I don't know. But this situation is inflamed to really be because of the passions, because of a 125-year-old turtle, and whether or not its home is being lost, or whether the turtle has been potentially killed. But as I understand it, the infilling of this area has been not just going on for a year or two, but it actually started several years ago. And I'm told that the provincial government, the ministry, actually approved activity in the area to say filling could be done. Just don't, hurt that creek. And how do we as a municipality not know what is permitted and what is not permitted? Where is the paper record? If this is back, this, you can't blame this on the Ford government. This would be back when we had Wynne or McGinty running the provincial regulations, and And, you know, the M&R came in. We have the same situation with Harbor and Holdings out Peninsula Road there. People writing letters to the editor saying that wetlands have been filled in by a developer. Yet we see documentation that says that the provincial government said that was okay. You know, do we, maybe Jeff, that may be a question for you. Do we have any record of that where the provincial government has said to either one of these sites that the alteration, you know, does meet provincial regulations?
Jeff?
We haven't received anything to date with regards to the discussion today. Staff are currently compiling information for the Harbor and Holdings site, and we have received some information in that context, and we'll bring that to council's attention at the planning meeting on that file. But to date on this one, we haven't received anything.
I do think it's important to note because that was a comment that I had made to someone, is that it is in our jurisdiction to contact the ministry. So maybe, you know, if Jeff, if we could have further clarification of where is the ministry's role? If we designate something EP, and we've designated it, then what is the ministry's, what's our responsibility? What's the ministry's responsibility to date right now? Like we've already referenced the fact that if someone was building a dwelling or any structure there, then that would trip us having some authority. And we have in occasion, and we've made people do site evaluation reports, and we've had to delineate exactly on a line. They have to get a professional to show where the property, you know, where the dwelling can, or the structure can go. But, you know, just to find out some more information about what the ministry's role and responsibility is at this point, when we designate something EP, then, you know.
That environmental protection boundaries in our zoning bylaws. So currently the standard for our review is limited, as mentioned, to the development review process or upon receipt of a planning application. However, I did mention earlier in my presentation and in my report that the Municipal Act does give council the discretion to pass bylaws regulating site alteration, including filling and dumping. And it gives council the discretion to pass bylaws implementing direction from the official plan. So we do have that authority as a municipality. It just hasn't been done to date.
Okay, so we could do that separate and beyond the what's happening at the county is what you're saying.
We could. I would caution council
Yeah.
with regards to the duplication of efforts, because direction might come out of the county process if approved, that would implicate anything we're doing.
Exactly.
And you've seen the time frame at the county level. There's no guarantee that it's going to go much quicker here. So I don't know what council wants to do, whether they want to provide some direction or to the county with regards to their process. I would be hesitant to start our own process without seeing that through. But
Okay.
we do have that authority if we choose to.
Okay, Mallory?
I was just going to point out, and I think everyone on council knows this, but just because, just for everyone to know, part of that process through the shoreline and site alteration bylaw is to then come with the draft that county council is okay with and approves to local councils and ask for delegation for site alteration. So that was always the plan. The
Yeah.
plan's been going on a while, but that was always the plan. So I would repeat Jeff's caution that we don't duplicate efforts on the same matter if we can help it. But
Yeah.
perhaps put pressure, and this is up to you, but for a quicker process that's already being conducted at our upper tier.
Okay, well, that'll be up to Pat and I to make sure we bring those things forward. Councillor Smith?
Thank you. So just to pursue this, we got the county application, which we discussed, and we could put a timeline on that to say, okay, this needs to get resolved at the county by such and such a date, or if failing that, we need to do something. But there's also the question of the provincial government. So I asked, and Jeff said he's familiar with something in regard to the Harbor and Holdings property, where the provincial government approved some actions there. If that's also the case for this property, shouldn't we know that? And let's, because again, there's no sense in us putting something in play to say, well, we're not going to approve it or we're going to disallow it. If the provincial government has said what the property owner is doing is okay, the provincial government overrules us. It's that lack of information that I find very frustrating, that we've had, again, dozens, 100 people cast aspersions at us, when in fact it's entirely possible that this property owner went to the authority, whether it was the Ministry of Environment or the M&R, and said, this is what I want to do. What's the problem? And they said, no, you can do this, but you can't do that. If they've blessed this in some fashion, people need to understand that. We need to understand that. And maybe make sure that he's in compliance with whatever was agreed to. But the lack of information is obviously extremely frustrating, and leaves people casting stones, and at us as a council, at the owner. We don't know who's right and who's wrong. None of us are environmental experts. None of us can say what he's doing is good or bad. I mean, on the surface, it appears very bad, but experts that could look at it when there's no snow on the ground and so forth and say, no, this is a reasonable course of action, and we as a provincial ministry have agreed to allow such. But how do we bring something like this to a conclusion where we decide in our own world, this is what we can do and what we can't do? How long do we leave it open? How long is this stop work order that you said is in place now? How long is that going to last? There's a lot of unanswered questions here, and that's the frustration. And to just say, well, we'll have to wait and see, seems like an inadequate, a completely inadequate response, frankly.
So I think that's the one thing that maybe Jeff can do is find some information at the ministry, because it could be that if it's through the ministry to a private landowner, it's none of our business. That we may not be able to get that information because it might be confidential. So, that sometimes happens. But Jeff, if you can maybe just, if nothing else, find that out, where the ministry's responsibility is, or how we can find out that, yes, they've received approval. If, what do we do if we get a complaint? My initial comments were, contact the ministry. Well, that's good, but we still don't know the outcome. Like Councillor Smith said, we don't know what that means, and are we allowed to know what that means? So I think that would be certainly a first step that we can take, and we need to get the issue resolved at the county one way or another, whether the bylaw gets in a further draft form, or whether, because like I said, it hasn't even come yet to a vote. We have not had it on the table to vote on as it's been presented. So I think we should move on from this if we could, for time's sake. Councillor Smith, one last comment.
Well, again, just to avoid having to appear to have nothing happen, could we agree that Jeff is going to come back to the committee of the whole meeting in February with an update in terms of, did the province approve something on this particular site? How long is the stop work order going to last? People are looking for some confidence here that Grace the turtle is not going to be buried in rocks. That the wetland is not going to continue to be filled unless some authority, and again, it could be the province, has said, look, if this is not harmful to the environment, it may be designated EP, but whatever. I don't know. Again, I'm not the expert to judge this.
Right.
We are being judged by the public right now.
Oh, I know.
And I'm not
That's
happy.
in my opening comments. I know it.
I'm not happy being accused of doing nothing.
Right.
And so simply saying we had a discussion today and then doing nothing is not. an
No, I
acceptable
think I
response.
did just ask Jeff to report back, but at the same time, our committee, the whole meeting is in 2 weeks. That would be practically impossible for him to have a report. It needs to be filed with the clerk in less than a week. So he might not even get an email response from someone at the ministry for, like, seriously, I'm sorry to the public, but that is the way it goes. To ask Jeff to, I did just ask Jeff before you put up your hand to report back on the ministry's take on it, and if we're able to find out if there's, if someone has permission, if that's legal for us to even know that. So, but to request it for the next committee, the whole meeting is not possible. But Jeff,
Do my
do you
best. I'm
understand
happy
that
to reach out. I'm happy to reach out.
you're going to
those
reach
eight-
out, and we'll report
Yep.
back when he can, as quickly as he can, and we are doing something. And we are trying to do something at the county.
Well, and is it reasonable to say it'll be at the committee of the whole meeting in March?
It's reasonable to say Jeff will report back as quickly as he can.
Okay. What about the other accusations that have been made in some of these emails? So even Dysart filling in wetlands on property it owns.
I don't know. I'm not aware of all those. I think it's general information. I'm not aware of that we're filling in our own property. So.
Well, that was in, at least one of the emails an owner talked about us filling in wetlands near a creek and, blah, blah, blah. So shouldn't we get the facts and be able to report back to that individual?
I'm dealing with the one that I'm most aware of, that there is a specific fight over. I'm not aware of anything else. It's not humanly possible. I am just one person. We've got county council, we've got this, I've got 100 other things on my plate. So I read, and a lot of the emails seem the same. I was focusing on the property in question that we received, why isn't Dysart doing something, and how terrible this is. And we are trying to do something. We've been trying for 3-4 years at the county, well, particularly with the bylaw and the draft form that it's in for the last 2+ years to do something. And I know it's frustrating, believe me, Pat and I are frustrated with it as well. And so, that's the best we can do for right now. I think we do have other things on today's agenda, and we will get a report back in terms of what the ministry's roles, responsibilities, and requirements to keep for information, what's permitted to be public information and what's private information. I think that's all we can do for today. So I do have a resolution to receive this report, though, if I could. Councillor Clark and Councillor Wood Roberts. Be it resolved, the council received the agenda report, Protection of Significant Natural Heritage Features, dated January 25th, 2022, for information purposes, and further that council acknowledges receipt of the letters concern regarding wetland protection in Dysart et al. All in favor? Okay, and carried. Next, we have 2 more items in planning. We have a letter from the Minister, Steve Clark. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Jeff, what this means.
Yeah, I'm happy to touch base on it. I'm just providing this for council's information. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing has provided a letter to the attention of heads of council in Ontario. The document provides a brief update and description of Bill 12, which is the Supporting People in Business Act from 2021, as well as Bill 276, the Supporting Recovery and Competitiveness Act of 2021. I've summarized these bills in my staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions or even provide a bit more background information for council if they would like. How would you like me to proceed?
Well, to see if there's any questions. I'm not sure really how it affects smaller municipalities like ours, where we do deal as a small council, we deal with almost everything on our own. We do delegate to a committee of adjustment, but we don't have, we're not a city, we're not a huge, large municipality where if everything had to come to council, it gets really bogged down. We're talking about, housing developments of 300 homes and things like that. So I'm not sure how some of these changes in delegation of authority would affect our municipality. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Well, I guess the question I'd ask staff, is there something in our process right now that is slowed as a result of council not delegating sufficient authority to you? Now that the province has introduced these changes that would allow us to delegate authority, is there anything you'd recommend that we change as a consequence of this new approach that would help speed appropriate development within Dysart?
Yeah, thank you. Chris and I both attended in a webinar on this subject, and a lot of planners had questions about this because the public consultation process is still required. The public meeting process is still required for most applications, which means it's already on council's agenda. So I think I think it's best to see how this plays out elsewhere, because in my opinion, it's the decision-making process is not what's delaying development. When an application is ready to be put on the council agenda, it's put on the council agenda and usually a decision's made. So it's generally the preliminary design process and obtaining the background studies, which is taking time to get a development forward. It's not the council decision process.
Okay, thank you for that. So really, let's just look for a mover seconder to receive this letter. Deputy Mayor Kennedy and Councillor McKechnie. Be it resolved that the letter for the Honorable Minister Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal, sorry, I can't even speak, Minister of Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing pertaining to Bill 13, Supporting People in Business Act 2021, and Bill 276, the Supporting Recovery and Competitiveness Act 2021, be received for council for information purposes. All in favor? Okay, carried. That was a mouthful, Ms. Mallory. Okay, and lastly, the Muskoka Watershed Council Municipal Official Plan recommendations.
Yeah, thank you. The Muskoka Watershed Council has submitted a letter and policy recommendations for council information and consideration. The document provides 36 recommendations for consideration during the municipality's next official plan review process. The proposed policies relate to integrated watershed management, given that we share watersheds with some of these surrounding jurisdictions. Also climate change, natural assets, transportation, energy efficiency, and innovative environmental approaches. So staff have not reviewed each one in detail at this time. However, we have filed this report in our official plan considerations folder, and it will be reviewed at the time of our next official plan review process. Similar to the last process, the letter from Minister Clark, we'll keep an eye on other jurisdictions, and if there are benefits to come out of it, we will implement those at the time of the official plan review process. Yeah.
Okay, so it may or may not have any effect, but it's just we receive it today and then it gets put in that file and pulled out when we do the OP. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I found it very interesting to review their report and the recommendations in it that spoke, so many of them, about the importance of protecting wetlands. We have language in our official plan now that would suggest we recognize the importance of wetlands, yet we don't have the follow-up legislation in terms of bylaws in place to protect those wetlands. So again, coming from a completely different source here, we got sophisticated as the Muskoka Watershed Council saying it's really important that you take action to protect your wetlands. And so, when I asked that the previous topic related to Gellert Road come back to the committee of the whole, is just an independent source here, coincidentally on the same meeting, saying it's really important that you folks act in that regard. Don't wait. Don't let it drag on for 3 or 4 years or more.
It was never the intention when the county bylaw, when the county council said, yes, let's strengthen our tree bylaw, that it take this route. So it's been an unfortunate and difficult process. So just a letter to receive, please, a resolution to receive. Councillor Wood Roberts, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Kennedy. Be it resolved that the Muskoka Watershed Council report titled Municipal Official Plan Recommendations dated December 2021 be accepted for information purposes. All in favor? Okay, carried. So that's everything from planning. Thank you, gentlemen. And we just have one resolution in our standing committee. It's from the Cultural Resource Committee meeting. And I believe there is a recommendation Barbara to ask for the remainder of their, well, I can't find it, of their surplus to be carried over, but I have to find that under finance. Yes, so there's a motion under finance. So did you see that?
Yes, that's been incorporated into the 2021 budget and the carryover into 2022.
Okay, so if we pass this resolution that we adopt the minutes, then that's included in that.
Yes.
Just wanted to check. Also, the request, we are going to have, I believe it's next month in closed session, a discussion of, from some education regarding, I don't know, what do you want to call it, Mallory? Sensitivity training or?
Yeah, it would just be the Sam Slick Park renaming.
So they're pulling stuff together for the February meeting?
I think March, actually.
Oh, March, okay, yep. Okay. So any from the chair to Councillor Donaldson, any comment, questions other than that in there?
Nope, I just read the minutes again and it all looks good.
Good.
That was probably one of the most important things was that we add to 2022's budget.
And then just to note, and I'm sure everybody's heard, like the arena, the mural project was extremely successful. And I again commend the people behind the organization of all of that. And so, you know, they're following up with I believe it's in May where they'll do a, you know, plaque on like the unveiling and all of that stuff, bit of a ceremony. So that was great. Okay, so mover and seconder to receive the minutes from Culture Resource. Councillor Donaldson and Councillor Wood Roberts. Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the draft minutes from the December 16, 2021 Cultural Resource Committee as information. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. So that concludes the open portion of our meeting. We are going to go into closed, but throughout closed, we had 2 delegations. And so, you know, if the press are watching, we will take some time, but while we're in closed, we'll also be taking approximately a 1-hour recess for lunch. So we're not actually talking for all that length of time. If anyone wants information, I don't believe there'll be any reports coming out of closed, but I'm estimating it to be, the other delegation was at 2, is that correct? So I estimate we'll be coming out of closed approximately 3 o'clock at the very latest. Okay, so yeah, it'll look like a screen for a long time. So what we'll do is we'll move into closed at this point. If I could have a mover seconder. Deputy Mayor Kennedy and Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that council adjourn its regular meeting at 11:50 to discuss matters pursuant to section 239, section 2 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended pertaining to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, a proposed land acquisition of the land in the township of Dysart, County Road 21, and a proposed disposition of land in the township of Harbour, Halliburton Lake Road. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. So we are in closed. You can just turn your cameras off for a sec. And if you need 5 minutes, you take that. Okay, and we are back in open session and there are no reports coming out of closed today. So just two more resolutions and one is the confirming bylaw. So, oh, wait a second, just let me check something. I forgot to ask, is there a notice of motion? Thanks, Mel. I knew there was something. Okay, seeing none. Now I will ask for mover seconder to confirm proceedings. Councillor Wood Roberts and seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-08 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular council meeting held on January 25th, 2022 be read a first, second, and third time, pass, sign, and the corporate seal attached thereto, or hereto, excuse me. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. And before I look for a motion to adjourn, Councillor Donaldson, do you want to just mention what's happening on Thursday out in your neck of the woods?
Sure. NOMI is ready to break the ground. This property was, I think, rezoned in before 1999. So this has been a long time going, and the NOMI has been working on it for 7 years to get all their ducks in a row, and it's going to be really exciting to see some progress there. So on this Thursday, so in 2 days, they're having their opening ceremony, and the excavators will be there to start the process. And I believe that there's 13 or 15 units they're starting with, and it's gonna be awesome to see things happening there finally.
Yeah, it really is. And I went on the website and it's pretty slick and it's pretty exciting. And so that's great. So I'll see you out there. COVID protocols in effect. My N95 mask on and warm clothes because we'll be outside. So that's great. I just thought I meant to mention that in my opening remarks, but I got distracted. Sorry. Okay, so let's move to adjourn. Councillor Clark and Councillor Donaldson. Oops. Be resolved that council adjourn its regular meeting held on January 25th, 2022. I lost my clock at 2:50 p.m. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. Thanks very much. Reminder that our next meeting is at the Committee of the Whole, which is, I'm just going to look, or Mallory, you might have a calendar in front of you. February
The
8th. And then that same week on February 11th, we have our third budget meeting scheduled. So just keep those in your calendar. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great day. Stay warm. It's going to -30 something again tonight. Okay, take care. Bye.